This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. This is a very special edition. We've got with us today the founder and CEO of Verkada, Filip Kalazan. Welcome to the Impact Podcast, Filip.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. And excited to be on the air and share the story with everyone.
You know, I just have to give truth in advertising, even though I don't take any advertisers on the Impact Podcast. I do want to say this up front. We are a client of yours and a very happy client of yours. And that's why I'm so honored to have you on the show today, because I really want others to hear about your great product and services so they could also enjoy the benefits of these. But before we get to that, I want to just say, I would love our audience to get to learn a little bit about you. Where did your journey even start, Filip? And how did you get here to be such a serial entrepreneur and a unique visionary that you are?
Sure. Well, I'll give you the short story of Filip, if you will, which starts back in Eastern Europe. Actually, I grew up in Poland, so that's my that's my origins. My parents were fortunate; they moved jobs and lived as expats in Paris for a number of years. So that's where I learned English. I went to an American high school in Paris.
Wow.
So that was my first exposure to being international. And then from there, I came to the US and I came to Stanford to study computer science. And it was actually remarkably, I've never been to the US before coming to Stanford. And it was kind of an amazing place to end up and land and, be surrounded by, technology and builders of technology. And, as a kid, I knew I loved technology. I loved computers. Maybe it was a lot about gaming, but then it evolved into, sort of the more creative part of my brain and, building things, developing things. And I think, Stanford really fueled that passion of mine and surrounded me with peers who are, probably, better than me at computer science. And that was great because they inspired me. But, I sort of rallied my friends. And I think from the beginning of my journey there, I always loved building things. I think what drives me intrinsically is if you can create something out of nothing and then have people, like yourself, like happy customers, benefiting from the things that I get to build, man, that's like the best feeling in the world, right? So that's, right. I would say that's what I live for. My journey started with actually a first startup that I started at Stanford as a student. Okay. So I built, so we were students, this is like back in 2007, 2008. I'm at Stanford in Silicon Valley and, in my mind, it's like the most modern, high-end part of the world. Sure. And yet the way you chose classes at school was out of a book. Like literally as a student in 2006, 2007 at Stanford, you'd get this book every quarter and you'd flip through pages and pages and pages and you'd have to make a decision about, one out of thousands of classes that you were going to sign up for. And man, as a student, I was like, well, in the era of, Google and Facebook and everything else going on, that ought to be better. And so that was my first startup. I built with some of my classmates a tool for students to discover classes, build their academic plan, and really be able to realize the most out of their undergraduate and graduate educations. And, that was, I think, the first time I built a product that was massively used by a lot of people. And I think I discovered that passion for building right there.
So you digitized what was a typical analog book, a course book, and you digitized the process and therefore modernized the whole system.
Yeah, exactly. And, we made it very easy for students to pick classes, compare notes with friends on hey, which professor is best at teaching which class and so on and so forth. So there's a fun element to it, but it became ubiquitous at Stanford. And then we, got that company over to I think 30 or 40 top universities in the US. And then we sold that company to Chegg, which you may know in the education space, where I was for the next couple of years. And I I often talk about Chegg as this like awesome business school and real life experience, right? I studied computer science. I learned how to build things. I was, by mix of hard work and luck, I guess I got acquired and got into Chegg. And for the next 4 years, I helped scale that company from 80 people to close to 1,000. We went public, and that was I call it the MBA in real life. And I'm, thoroughly grateful to the leadership team there for, really teaching me how business works, right? I mean, it was like my real first exposure, and I think that's what gave me, a lot of the background and the excitement to do something again, later on, which is, what led to Verkada ultimately.
So wait a second. So what's so interesting, Filip, is, you went to one of the greatest universities on the whole planet. And so many people think that once you go to Stanford or Harvard, you should know it all. But what you point out is something really important that a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about. The real life experience that you got to apply as a builder, as a maker, after you got out of Stanford, both at CourseRank and at Chegg, was invaluable to your journey, you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, look, honestly, one of the most valuable things you learn at a place like Stanford is I think the humility. You get exposure to so many people who are just so smart. They're the smartest people from the best schools and the, best places in the world. And that really gives you perspective. And it definitely did for me. And I was just so ecstatic to work with those people and build something together. And then, you take that academic background and then you have to combine it with real world experience, right? And I think nothing matches that, right? You start building something, you get it to the users, you get it to the customers, you listen to the stories. At Chegg, we used to, travel around the country to meet students at different universities, really understand their situations, to get their mindset. And that's how you get that experience to really, understand, the intricacies of the products you want to build. And I think through that experience, I realized, that's really what I'm passionate about, is building and delivering that product experience that at the end of the day resonates with customers.
I don't want to glance over another important point you made. You're a first generation Polish immigrant, and sure. I'm a third generation Armenian immigrant. And my experience growing up in New York City and now living on the West Coast, Filip, and tell me what you think about this, is immigrants make great entrepreneurs because of our DNA that is comprised a lot of flexibility and resilience and the ability to adapt to the changes that are happening in the marketplace. Do you feel that immigrants have almost a leg up in the world of entrepreneurship because of their resilience and their fortitude to adjust to the conditions they're in?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, look, I think in my own journey, I think the international upbringing definitely, fostered that, feeling of resilience that you're describing. I think the other thing that I would say certainly is true for me, and I think true for many immigrants, I'm curious what you think, but like for me, coming to America, the American dream is very much alive. I'm like, I'm coming here. It's a big market. I want to make an impact. I want to do awesome things. I love the fact that in America, you can be 22 and build a company that thousands of people, thousands of students at the time were using. The idea that someone could buy a group of students and that I could be having an important role in a company that went on to go public. I mean, man, that doesn't happen anywhere in the world. And I think, Silicon Valley is super special. And I am eternally grateful for being here and having that experience, really. I mean, and I think that's, that's part of that whole dream. Yeah,
it is. And it's fun when you get to hear it through somebody else's eyes, because it's constantly re-inspiring. It's constantly re-inspiring.
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about, now you finished with Chegg. You've had now really two success stories under your belt. Both CourseRank and Chegg now really are, even though they're intertwined, they're two success stories. You're still very young. Where was the aha moment to create for Verkada? And for our listeners and viewers out there, I've got it up on my website, on my browser. I want others to be able to check it out. Please go and check out Verkada at www.verkada, Verkada, Verkada.com. Where did that aha moment come from?
Yeah, so, I think kind of going back to the earlier part of my story, I think by, that point after Chegg in my career, I had realized that I'm a builder. And what drives me is building products, and specifically, working with technology. I think that was like a big requirement for me. So, I think when folks start companies, they often think about, hey, what's the market? How much, how big can this thing get? And I think for me and my co-founders, there's two components to it. One certainly was, kind of how impactful and important this idea can be in the world. But the second, which was, I think just coming from my personal experience and maybe my personal bias, was, hey, I know myself and I know that I'm going to do best if I work on products that I love, that I, love to interact with every day. And so that was the drive to, start something that's truly a, quote unquote, technology company, right? With meaningful software, meaningful hardware innovation. And that journey that led up to Verkada really spanned months before, right? So, following the decision to start something again, I started pulling sort of the folks I've worked with before together. And we gave ourselves a, big chunk of time to really flesh out and land on the idea that we would ultimately build, which became Verkada. And I think, that's, in retrospect, perhaps one of the best things that we've done. We didn't jump on the first idea. We took, we gave ourselves a year, and it took us about, I want to say 7 months of that year, where we were day in and day out working on different ideas, and we would commit to them, right? We would take an idea, we would prototype it, we'd talk to investors, we'd talk to customers, and we had many ideas, which, we went through that cycle, and we said, actually, that one's not great because reason X, Y, Z. And ultimately, through that process, we landed on video security as a market, and I'll tell you why that was exciting.
Yeah.
Video security. When we looked at it in 2016, we got excited about it because we had all my co-founders and I been exposed to physical security cameras in the enterprise context,
right?
And the realization we had was that a lot of the products that are used to protect schools, protect airports, protect hospitals, those tools were far behind, or they felt like they were far behind from a software perspective from some of the consumer products that all of us are used to, right? Like, I'm sure you've had a Nest Cam or a Ring or another product in your home, and all of those are awesome, right? Like, it's great. And I was super excited about those products. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, why aren't the things at the airports and the hospitals where the security is like, that much more important? Why aren't those products equally innovative or equally evolved, if you will? And so that was the genesis of the idea for Verkada. And, very quickly we started like working on early product prototypes and showing those to customers. And they validated this assumption. The customers very quickly told us, wow, Filip, if you can actually deliver on what you're saying, like, we want to place orders, we want to try it, we want to get betas. And so that really gave us the momentum on this particular idea to commit, to incorporate, to start the company, start hiring, and really chase this idea of building a modern cloud video security product.
So Filip, that's fascinating in that you did something, I had never heard of it being reverse engineered like that. You chose your people first, and that was the most important part of the process. That was one, very important pillar of your process. And then you concurrently went down the road with numerous ideas and then chose the best idea on the group's best thinking, which typically there's a singular or dual or triple entrepreneur group that gets together. They come up with the idea and then they choose the group. You seem to have done that in reverse, but still come out with an amazing idea and vision.
Yeah, and I think, look, I mean, I was lucky, right? I had a group of folks that I've worked with before, and and I met Hans, one of my co-founders, actually in this process of exploration of ideas. And as co-founders, we all get along extremely well, and I think that's one of the core ingredients of a startup, on its journey. As I'm sure the journey is always, ups and downs, successes and failures, and the resilience of the team, the persistence on, executing against the goals, especially in the early days. That's a critical factor in getting the thing off the ground.
That is so true. People sometimes don't understand that it's the people sometimes more important than actually the which business enterprise you choose, because the people, if they're all good and work well together and have the right chemistry, they can make it through any battle together. But Absolutely. If the people aren't really, have the right chemistry, even a great idea will never get realized.
Yep.
So that's fascinating. So, okay, so you chose security, let's catch up the business enterprise world to what has become a very successful home market. So when did you, have something ready to launch, and when did you launch the first iteration of what you had created?
Yeah, so it took us. We started the company in the summer of 2016, and it took us about a year, maybe 14 months from kind of the day of starting the company to launching our first product, which were our first two cameras into the market. And that, by the way, was a sort of an incredible experience in itself, right? I've done software products before. Hans, one of my co-founders, have done hardware products before in addition to software. And I was just amazed by how quickly you could iterate and move on hardware execution. So that in itself was an awesome learning for me. But about 14 months after starting the company is when we launched our MVP, our first minimal viable product that we started selling to to customers, our first camera. And that then drove the kind of adoption and reception in the marketplace, and made us really realize that, hey, we're actually onto something, right? Once you get off the phone with a number of customers and they're nodding and they're happy and
Right.
they're smiling as you're showing them the features, you're like, okay, good. Like, we've done something right here. And that's when the real work starts, right? And by the way, 2018 was our first year of sales and our first full year of sales. And I remember that year, we made a plan of execution of how much we would sell. And, it was tremendous. We sold, I think, 6x what we had planned,
Wow.
Which sounds amazing, right? On the outside and from an investor perspective, amazing. Internally, that meant producing 6 times more hardware and scaling the software platform 6 times faster than we had planned, which was just a tremendous amount of work. But it certainly got us off, on the right momentum and the right pace, and validated.
Good problem. That's a good problem to have.
That's a good problem, for sure, a good problem. But nonetheless, like quite a challenging beginning to the company's journey. And I think the other thing that I'll point out is, today I think folks look at Verkada and it's like, hey, what you're doing makes sense, Filip. Like it's obvious buildings need this. When we started at the beginning in 2016, folks looked at this and they're like, why are you building cameras? Like kind of, like not the market that I know the most about. Everyone in 2016 was talking about, self-driving cars and AI and VR, and we're like, Filip, go do that. And I'm glad we persisted in our initial idea and actually built out this business.
I just want to ask you a question. Between 2016 and 18, you and Hans and your team already were successful human beings. As success goes, you already had 2 big wins under your belt, Hans as well, and your teammates as well. And you're all, of course, with the tremendous education behind you. So you have great resumes, great success stories. How hard was it for you to raise the money to make Verkada a reality? Is it still hard, even with the track record, or is it much easier?
No, I mean, it was. You'd be surprised. It was quite challenging. So I think our thought initially was like, we've done companies before. Maybe this will be a cakewalk to raise the seed round. And by the way, the markets were very active. But I think, as I said earlier, initially, folks talked to us and they looked at it and they're like, why are you building cameras again? Like it doesn't, the idea didn't really resonate.
Right.
And the market wasn't one that investors were familiar with. And I think, the fact that we decided to, develop a solution as our first product, which was combining hardware and software, which we felt was critical to delivering this awesome customer experience, by the way, that fact of building the hardware made the business seem much more risky, right? And so, I would say in the first year of the company, it was a lot of sweat to get, investors into the company. In fact, the first money into the company came from the founders. And, in the first 12 months, we definitely had a moment where I was pulling out my own checkbook and writing checks to make payroll. And it was a stressful first year. But, once we started selling the product, that story changed quite a bit, right? The market reception and the fact that, customers were talking on our behalf, that was really the big shift with how investors perceive this market and our company.
When you pull out your own checkbook to make payroll, that means, as all other great entrepreneurs, you're all in. You were all in on this thing.
We were all in. We wanted to make this work, and it was dicey at one point, but I'm glad we persisted and made it through. Yeah.
So you raise the capital, seed capital. You do 2018, and you do 6x as to what your forecasts and projections were. So, explain a little bit to our audience that haven't had the benefit of using your great products and services yet. How did you differentiate yourself from what was the traditional legacy enterprise cameras and security systems compared to what you've created and where you're going with this?
Sure, yeah. So, I'll tell you both the answer that we had in 2016, the original, and then where it's evolved to be and where it's headed, right? Because those two are actually, quite different. So, where the story started was, hey, let's build a cloud-managed enterprise security camera for companies that have hundreds or thousands of cameras deployed, right? So, if you think about your home use case, maybe you have a Ring or a Nest camera or something like that. That's right. What, most folks are familiar with. Typically in a home environment, you might have 1, 2, 5 cameras. I think the average in a consumer world is like 2 or 3 cameras. That's very different in the enterprise, right? And that was like one of the first things we had to design for, which is, we realized that many of our customers would have hundreds or thousands of cameras at disparate geographical locations, often with limited internet connectivity. So, think of a warehouse in rural Arizona. They might be protecting goods in that warehouse. They might have 40, 50 cameras, and it might be running on a ADSL connection, right? So we had to design the product with that in mind. And really that's where the technical architecture and design of our system was from requirements like those and conversations with those customers. And so really what we developed at the beginning in 2016 was a modern cloud-based security camera that you plug in and it just works. It's like the iPhone of cameras. That's how we thought about it.
Wow.
You get it, it works, it meets your needs, and it doesn't matter if your internet connection is crappy. It doesn't matter if you have 50 or 100 or 1,000 of those cameras. It should just do what you the user, expect. And importantly, it's an all-in-one package, right? So it removes the burden from the customer of integrating with other products, of kind of combining different systems, and we guarantee that it works well, right? And if something is off, call our team. We'll be there. We'll help you fix it. We'll navigate the issue. So that was the approach, kind of at the start of the company.
Right.
I alluded to that vision has evolved, and I would say we're very much like a product vision driven company, right? We're all excited about what we're building. And that vision, 2-3 years into the journey, evolved from, hey, Verkada is just a camera company, to actually, we want to build the operating system that all commercial buildings and physical space runs on. And what does that mean concretely? Like, what is an operating system for physical space? Right. To us, that's the sum of different devices and adjacent verticals working seamlessly together. So we started with cameras. We then built access control. So think of every building where you badge in and out and kind of control door locks and access to those buildings. We then built sensors for initially for vape detection and then for air quality monitoring, which we can talk about more about that line.
I want to talk about that. Yes.
And we kind of kept expanding. And the theory behind the company is that really over the next decade, and by the way, we have a very long view on this company. We want to build this to be a long-lasting, sustainable company. Over the next decade, we plan to invest in many of these adjacencies with a philosophy of building the excellent product in each of those categories, and with the dream that one day, if we have many products across these different categories, they work seamlessly together. And so now you have a unified way of managing your building. And that we think of as that operating system of the building of the future. So that's what we're building towards today, but happy to kind of dive in.
So for instance, if I'm the building manager of a big building in downtown New York City, I have a Verkada dashboard in front of me up on my laptop or my tablet. And at that dashboard will tell me everything I need to know what's going on in that building in terms of air quality, security, visual security, and other types of security, one dashboard, and it's all there for me in one dashboard.
Yeah, that's correct. And you can do that, on location, or you can do that remotely, right? So if you're, kind of a security person managing many sites, or maybe you're on a campus and you're walking around, you just take out your phone and you can see everything that's on the web right there on your phone, and, kind of access the different devices, whether that's cameras or access control or anything else. In one place.
For our listeners and viewers who just joined us, we've got Filip Kalazan with us right now. He's the founder and CEO of Verkada. You can find Verkada and their great products at www.verkada.com, Verkada.com. Filip, you've been in this now for 6 short years, but 6 short years can feel a lot longer when you're an entrepreneur, obviously. But relatively speaking, 6 years is a tight timeline. How many employees have you grown to, and how many cities and countries do you now cover? Forget cities. How many countries are you now in?
Yeah, so we're international. We're a global product, and we're growing that presence very quickly now. So we started in the US, and obviously, targeting the domestic market initially,
Right.
it's the easiest way to go. That's where we started. But our product is relevant globally, and I think actually, one of the key advantages of Verkada, just as you can think of a single pane of glass for all of your locations within the US, you can think of a single pane of glass for multinational companies, dealing with, with these challenges across different countries. So we're, very actively, working on expanding globally, the business. Today we have, kind of the core of our team is in the US. So our engineering team is based in San Mateo, California. That's where most of the, development effort, happens on the product. We have sales teams across the US. We actually have 4 offices in the US. So about 1,000 people,
Wow.
600 in San Mateo. We have a Salt Lake City and an Austin office. We kicked those off, I want to say 18 months ago, with like 3 or 4 folks, and they're both up to like 100 people now.
Wow.
And we just opened Tampa in Florida and Scottsdale outside of Phoenix in Arizona. So we're super excited to have presence across the
Yeah.
United States, and that gives us access directly to the customers, because so much of it is about building that lasting relation and building that trust with the customer. And so really having people in region and being able to talk to those customers, visit those customers, understand how they're using our products, it makes a big difference to us. Internationally, our presence is today in London. We have an office for, kind of all of the EMEA market. And then we also started working on our Australia present with an office in Sydney. So yeah, we're expanding, and we see global expansion as a huge opportunity for
So exciting. Let's shift now the conversation to the customers and communities you operate in. Obviously, I said at the top of the show, and for our listeners who just joined us, or our viewers who just joined us, ERI is a large e-waste recycling and hardware data destruction company. So hardware, data protection, and the sight on everything we're touching is very of utmost critical nature. So we are not only a customer of Verkada's, but we're a very happy customer, and we continue to buy and use your services, and it's improved our company massively. Talk a little bit about the other customers and communities you serve, so our clients, so our listeners and viewers can get a real view of the multiple uses of your products and services.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe I'll start with the beauty of our product suite, and as we design it, is that the same products we build are relevant across many verticals and many different, categories of customers, right? Whether that be, I don't know, industrial or food production, or maybe medical, healthcare, or education, right? So we have a very broad range of, of customers that use our products in different settings. And I think, what's common is that customers are drawn to our solution with that ease of experience, with that ease of use of our products. It makes navigating the challenges of physical security, much easier for them. So that's maybe the overarching. We can kind of zero in on any given of those segments, and happy to give you examples of how folks use the product. But I'll give you like an anecdote maybe from we get stories from customers all the time.
Yeah.
And of course these are security incidents, so I can never name the customer.
Of course.
Wants to know about wants to disclose that, but we're happy to share stories. So for example, we have customers that are retail bank locations, and I'll give you kind of a camera story where I really was excited about the impact on the situation that our product had, right? So we had a bank that deployed our cameras, and as a user, you'll know that with the Verkada camera product, it's very easy to share access to a camera. So if something bad was going on one of your sites, you could text a link to someone else, and they can securely pull up that camera feed. So we had one of the situations where actually an armed robber came into a bank that was equipped with Verkada and held people hostage, which is obviously a very serious, very bad situation to be in. And what was remarkable was that during that incident, that bank was able to share access to the video with the police force that was on site, which is just kind of unheard of, right? Like typically, video security is something that you use after the fact, right? Like the
Right.
incident happens, and then you evaluate what happened, and maybe you use it for, insurance or whatever. And so that was, one of the first times where, like, wow, I was so excited because our technology was used in real time by the first responders on the ground. It made their jobs easier. It kept people safe. And gladly that situation was resolved without any casualties, any injuries, which was obviously great to hear. So that's one class of
So let's parse that out. So instead of a de facto use, which is historically the way the video feeds are used for, like you said, law enforcement purposes, insurance purposes, this was a real-time use where it actually helped resolve the issue and potentially help prevent a catastrophic result.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And I can give you kind of a, less, maybe less scary, but, different class of
Sure.
use case, right? So, a lot of schools are our customers. They deploy the products, cameras, but also access control, also vape detection, which we should talk about, to protect their students. And again, historically, folks would only use video security after the fact when something goes wrong. But now, because it's so easy and so accessible, they're able to mitigate situations in real time. So we had a school where, the school was going into lockdown because ammunition, like bullets, were found in the school parking lot, right? And, as you imagine, that's like a terrifying situation, and, police get dispatched and so on and so forth. And, in that particular situation, it was very lucky the school administrators were able to use our cameras to find that it actually was a completely innocuous situation. A parent was dropping off their kid, and some crate fell off their truck, and it happened to have, and like there's no bad intent, right? So they were able to track it back to the person, call them, confirm, and what could have been a long lockdown period, was kind of quickly diffused, and that's exactly the kind of story that we want to hear, right? We want to kind of proactively help folks keep their tenants, keep their students safe.
That's fascinating. I assume healthcare services, law enforcement, financial services are all heavily now starting to become users of your hardware and software. Is that true?
They are, and and I think those use cases obviously vary vastly by customer, but yeah, we're getting a lot of adoption across.
I want to take a real life example, and again, I don't want you to give away any trade secrets or message anything to competitors. But what's fascinating recently, I'm a native New Yorker, and of course, once you're a native New Yorker, that city stays with you and is part of your heart and soul forever. And so recently, there've been some very, very tragic situations in the subway systems in New York. And I heard the mayor come out, who I'm very excited about, a change in leadership there. And he came out and did a press conference about 2 weeks ago after the last shooting that happened in the subway system. And he said, listen, I'm trying to be as proactive as I can be. I've sent my deputies out to conferences to learn about all the technologies that now can be installed in subway systems to prevent and to detect people who have firearms or live ammunition with them, to prevent these kind of horrific, tragic circumstances happening again. Is that where you then step into the breach and say, we're part of that solution, we can be part of that solution? Is that part of the future of Verkada, solving those kind of municipality and city crises and helping them avoid these kind of tragedies in the future?
Yeah, I mean, look, certainly we're building towards being able to solve, and hopefully prevent issues like that. I will caveat it by saying it's a very hard problem, right?
Absolutely.
You're talking about folks who might be, walking with concealed weapons in their jacket. There's physical limits to what camera technology in particular can do. And so I always ground, our customers in that reality, right? Like the camera is a tool, but cameras have limits too, right? And you really, I think, our job as a vendor and a manufacturer, and the customer's job who's implementing these products, is really to find that intersection where that technology can drive the most value, and do what's best to to kind of protect folks in a responsible fashion, right? And I think I couldn't tell you that, hey, one day a camera will detect every gun. Why? Because, well, cameras don't see through clothes, right?
Right.
As a, very trivial example.
100%.
But, certainly there's lots that can be done, ranging from sensors to cameras to other technology. Obviously with access control, we're working a lot with customers on building evacuation plan, lockdown plans. If a shooter is present on premises, how do you navigate that situation in the real time, in the heat of the moment? That's the sort of thing where we think we can actually, really drive, meaningful outcomes, and that's what we're working
I
on.
love what you said earlier, in that your products and services can actually help resolve situations while they're happening in real time, instead of just becoming a historical overview of what happened. It could actually create better results because it's a real time tool, which I just think is truly amazing. Let's go back to now. Let's go talk about what we've just lived through together, Filip, with the rest of the world. COVID. How did COVID help you galvanize some of your thinking and help you create some new products or services that can be even more useful for your present clients and potential clients?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the big thing with COVID when it happened, now, 2 years ago, initially we didn't know what would happen in the market, and our approach was like, man, offices are shutting down, but I think we had assumed the world is not going to all shut down. Therefore, the market's going to continue to exist. Therefore, we should continue building products and executing. And certainly there is aspects of our technology that can be helpful in kind of COVID tracking, contact tracing, that kind of thing. But I would say that generally speaking, we haven't overly shifted the company strategy as a result of COVID. And I think unlike many industries, COVID was neither a headwind nor a tailwind to us, right? We were sort of agnostic. We continued executing. I think, the vision of what we're doing on the product side, I think, some of it is applicable to COVID and pandemic situations. A lot of it is applicable to other aspects of physical safety. And, I think in retrospect, looking back at it, I think we've just stayed level-headed and continued to execute on our vision. And that's kind of how we navigated, the crisis.
You mentioned earlier about the environmental systems that are now sensors that are now built into many of your systems with regards to air quality, but also potentially vaping. Can you explain how that evolves your technology even more and gives us more opportunities as users and clients of what you've created?
Yeah, so that's actually a really cool story. So we were early in our days building cameras, and many schools were customers, and the schools, many of them were loving the product because of this usability, and so they started talking to us about this problem they had with kids, kind of in the vaping pandemic, smoking in bathrooms and whatnot.
Wow.
And they're like, hey, Filip, hey, Verkada, how can we solve this problem? And folks would come up with crazy ideas like, hey, like maybe we can put a camera without a lens and with just a microphone. And I'm like, how are you going to listen to someone smoking? Like that's not going to work. That's not going to happen. And so that's really what prompted us to, kind of think about that problem space, was this vaping pandemic in schools. We happened to have someone on our engineering team who was knowledgeable in the space of air quality sensing. And so, we started prototyping initially. It was like almost like an internal, hackathon project, if you will, where we were prototyping with combining different sensors that detect different particular matter in the air to see if we could, differentiate what is a vaping incident from a person cleaning the bathroom and using a spray that emits, kind of a lot of odor or other things going on, right? And so we built these devices initially, kind of in a very quick way, and we realized that, hey, actually, like we have a pretty good shot at detecting someone vaping and signaling that to the school, and that was the beginning of that journey with that product category. So we kind of put together a more formal program, started beta testing it with schools, and really, I think it panned out in two ways for us, right? I mean, I think initially the schools were very much about, hey, like we want to deploy this so that when someone is vaping, we can catch them in the act and stop them, and make sure that they're not doing that. That was the initial assumption, and the product has done some of that. What we've also seen in the deployments with the schools, though, is that they use it as a tool to measure progress on fighting the vaping pandemic. right? So schools will deploy these devices across campus, in their bathrooms, in their locker rooms, in their hallways. And, in addition to that, not just thanks to the product, but thanks to the programs that they're putting in place, the education that the educators are doing on the subject of vaping, they're doing the work to teach kids why it's a bad idea to vape. And then they're using our devices to measure the results and impact of that work, right? They're seeing through trends from the Verkada vape sensor, air quality sensor, that over time, there's a trend of decline in the amount of cases of students smoking on campus. And that's obviously good. We as a team are super excited about this particular product line. It's not the most massive part of our business, right, but it's just so good, to see that one of our products is helping, particularly students, particularly, young folks, not go down this path of an unhealthy lifestyle.
Two questions. How your clients received it? Are you finding more and more clients are deploying that product for their use and finding success with it? Number one.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, what we've seen is we started with the school use case, and we've seen a lot of schools adopt that product. And then what we quickly learned and realized, which was a nice surprise, is that many other industries began using the same product for slightly different applications, right? So for example, in food safety, we had a lot of applications where, the air quality and cleanliness in rooms where you're handling, food products has to meet a certain standard. And we're able to, log that quality, record it, make it easily accessible, and alert when something goes off, right? If we detect that, the particulate matter in the air is too high, we can send an alert, we can create a workflow and help the customer mitigate that. We've also seen applications in cold storage, like refrigeration. Oftentimes it's trivial things like, how many cases we have where a customer installs this thing and they realize that all the problems result from someone leaving a door not fully shut to a walk-in refrigerator. Right. And that's actually, some of the magic you get when you combine, multiple products on the platform, right? You have a Verkada camera watching your, cold storage room, along with one of our air quality sensor. The alert goes off. Hey, the temperature and humidity are above a normal threshold. What's going on? Oh, I look at my camera. Oh, Joe, who badged in, left the door propped open. Great. I know exactly how to mitigate that problem. And ultimately that's, I think that's a preview of the magic that we hope to deliver across all of these different product categories.
Right.
Of the company.
And that led to my second question, in that what you did is, once you found the air quality and vaping application, you're now taking that vertical of air quality and you're going into other subverticals. That's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. And, folks are now thinking about air quality and air cleanliness in many different ways, right? What percentage of air is fresh air in a building, right? In the context of the pandemic, that was a, kind of a big discussion. So we're, experimenting, and we always, I would say we always evolve our products with user feedback. So we're listening to those stories, and certainly there's more exciting stuff that the world will see coming from us.
Well, Filip, speaking of more exciting stuff, talk a little bit about the future. What's next? I mean, you've already started. This is now your third venture in many ways, and you got two big successes. And now, where are you in this journey? If this was a baseball game, if Verkada was a baseball game, are you in the bottom of the second inning? Top of the fifth? Where are you?
We're just getting started. I mean, that's the hardest part to really convey to people. And actually, if you ask any of our employees, I feel like every onboarding, every all hands, I remind people that it's just the beginning of the journey. Yeah. And I'll give you a data point on that, right? If you look at, we're a private company. We're 6 years into our journey. We're in a massive market. The market for physical security products, building infrastructure, it's over $100 billion market. Today we're a tiny fraction of that market. There's tons of room to grow. And as I mentioned, we're still, only a private company. If you look historically across, technology companies who've gone public and look at the data, I think, and I may have to double check, but I believe the stat is that most of those companies generate most compounding value in year 7 after the IPO. And so I'm like, I have to keep reminding folks, it's like, yes, we're 1,000 people, and yes, we have offices around the world. But, to me, it really feels like, it's the beginning of a bigger journey. And I think, look, importantly, everyone on our team, our co-founders, everyone we hire, we kind of proactively tell this to people. We're here to build a lasting business that is important in the world. That's the dream. The dream is not to build a quick company, flip it, and kind of move on with life. Really, we want to make a product experience that changes customers' lives for the better, and a business that that lasts generations. And I think that's a huge challenge. And few companies succeed at doing that, but we like that. It's an audacious, ambitious goal. And certainly, we're going to try as hard as we can to chase that.
Well, my money's on you, Filip, because you've done it before, and I know you're going to do it again here. And I want you to come back on Impact to share the continued journey in the future. For our listeners and viewers out there, to find Filip and his colleagues and to buy his great cameras or get his great software combined like we have at ERI, which was transformative for us, please go to www.verkada.com, Verkada.com. Filip, thank you for creating Verkada. Thank you for making the world a better and safer place. We're really grateful to you, and thank you for joining us today on the Impact Podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And thank you everyone for listening. This was awesome.
This episode of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Closed Loop Partners. Closed Loop Partners is a leading circular economy investor in the United States with an extensive network of Fortune 500 corporate investors, family offices, institutional investors, industry experts, and impact partners. Closed Loop's platform spans the arc of capital from venture capital to private equity, bridging gaps and fostering synergies to scale the circular economy. To find Closed Loop Partners, please go to www.closedlooppartners.com.